Hello, folks. I am back with another firearms review. And what I did the other day was I traded in my Glock 34 Gen 4 for a Sig Sauer X5 Legion. Now, I know I'm pretty much late to the party on this one, and I know there are a lot of other videos on the Legion itself. So I'm going to spare you all the details about the specs and all that. So this firearm is empty, and you're going to probably ask, why did I get this firearm if I already had the X5? And I do have the X5 right here. And what I definitely did with this one was I put the tungsten grip on the X5. I bought a separate tungsten grip from Sig Sauer and put it on my X5. And as you see, there's no really big difference between the two. It doesn't say Legion on the tungsten grip on the Legion version or the one that I bought separate for my regular X5. The only difference you'll see is there's an optic on here. So the one important thing you need to know about the placing the optic on here is on the Legion version. From my understanding, you will probably want to check this yourself to be sure. But from my understanding, on the Legion version, it's only going to accept two optics, which is the Delta Point Pro and the other version would be the Romeo 1 Pro that would go on here. So the footprint for the Legion X5 version is only going to be two different optics on here. Now, this one here is the regular Romeo 1. This is not the Romeo 1 Pro. I got this some time ago. So I believe the footprints are different. If there is a difference on the regular X5, somebody contact me, let me know. But from my understanding, from what I understand, when they put out the Legion version, it only accepts the Delta Point Pro and the Romeo 1 Pro. And that's basically the difference between these two outside of a couple other things. One of the things is being the trigger. This, as you see, this is the original trigger. And if you notice, there's a little space right here. You pull that, and it's a little resistance, and you get that right there. You get your trigger pull there. And your slack right there to bring it back so you can fire it again is a little bit longer than it is on a Legion. As you see on the Legion, there is this cutout here to reduce weight. And if you look at that, the slack isn't as much as it is on this particular one, the X5. So the slack brings you right to the wall and you pull, and there's not that resistance, if you notice, that resistance when I pull the trigger. And far as the reset goes, your reset is much shorter. So there is a slight difference as far as the trigger is concerned. There's another difference that I know about is basically, let me just take this down a little bit off camera here. When you take down both of these firearms, the spring assembly is definitely different, and a lot of you know that this is a captured spring design right here. On the Legion, which is a little different, this is not a captured design. It's actually a spring design that it will come off the guide rod, and the guide rod is a steel guide rod. So that's where the difference is, and you can see that when you look right here versus the captured design, you see it's connected right here, and it's shorter than if you look at the base of the guide rod right here. So you notice there's some thickness there versus this one. And like I said, this is a captured design. And it with this particular design, it is a flat coil spring versus this is your more traditional rounded spring. This is you can use 1911 springs in these. I'm going to test that out in the future. I want to see if a Wilson Combat spring would work with this particular uh, spring setup here. I want to just take maybe a Wilson Combat 1911 spring, put that on here, and then fire that at the range. This spring assembly is a 14-pound spring, and it also comes with a 12-pound spring. Now, I got something to tell you about these particular spring assemblies. Now, it's really interesting about those spring assemblies. Okay, about what I was talking about with the spring assembly with this. I've never had a malfunction with this one. Uh, Plain out, no malfunctions. But I did have several malfunctions with this, and I'm going to say roughly about 10 with a particular brand of ammo. That ammo is Fiocchi 115 grain blue box range ammo. And I had a problem with that because when the rounds ejected out, it got caught like right between here. The brass would catch right there, or it wouldn't lock back on the last round. Now, the problem I think is it's basically ammo related. And the reason why I'm saying it's ammo related, I don't think the pressure is the same. When I used the federal round, the federal practice round that they have in the white box, no malfunctions whatsoever. Blazer brass, no malfunctions whatsoever. But I put a box of 150 rounds through with the Fiocchi, and I put 50 of the other two brands that I mentioned. So the problem that I basically see is there's not enough blowback or it's a weaker ammo. So what I did was I took the 12-pound spring, switched it out, and I did not have any malfunctions with that ammo. And it just it just really, when you buy a firearm, you don't want it to malfunction at all. You don't want to change parts at all or anything like that. That issue is usually with firearms that usually have compensators or suppressors where you have to change the springs out. More notably, the FN509, when I put a compensator on that particular firearm, it would not. I was having the malfunctions similar to this. But when I changed the FN509 tactical comes with a second uh, spring. Once I put the spring in there, it was able to adapt and have no malfunctions. And was the same situation. And the reason why SIG decided to do that is because this is supposed to be your competition firearm. A lot of people use different loads or something like that, and they wanted to stay within the guidelines of certain competitions that they have. I'm not a competitive shooter, so I can't really explain how that works. I do know that people load their powders in their projectiles and so forth, so they can have a different power factor for competition. But for the average shooter, we don't pretty much care about that. We either want to shoot 115, 124, or 147 grain and have no issues. So it is a good idea that SIG did include a second spring in there. Like I said, with this one, I have no issues, and that's because the difference is they changed the spring assembly for this one versus this one. So that's why you're going to have those little bit of hiccups. Some people don't have hiccups at all, but my thing is I don't like to usually buy ammo that's going to give me a problem, or cheap ammo or things like that, because I know there's going to be an issue or whatnot. So that's why I try to use quality ammo in a quality firearm. And you know the old saying, good in, good out, bad in, bad out. So that's what I attribute that to. Uh, Other than that, the Legion is pretty much the same as the X5. It's just the difference in spring assembly. I do think there is a difference in the trigger. I don't have a scale, but I can feel that there is a difference with the trigger. Uh, Now, you're probably saying, why don't I add a sight to this? I'm not going to bother putting a sight on this. I'm just going to run this without a sight. And I'm going to be shooting this a lot, and I'm going to be giving you some updates on this particular firearm because I want to shoot this without an optic, and I'm going to put a lot more rounds to this. So there's going to be a lot of rounds, and there's going to be some experimenting, like I said, with the Wilson Combat Springs that I'm going to attempt to put in here. This firearm I have over 1,000 rounds in, and it is great. It's a great shooter, and like I said, they are basically pretty much the same firearm. So should you upgrade to a Legion, if you already have an X5, just only get the tungsten grip module, and it's like you're having an X5. It's going to have that weight. It's going to have that quick tracking because of the weight of the tungsten grip. Then go with that. If you don't have this, the regular X5, sure, get the Legion. You're going to like the trigger a little bit more. The only downside that I see, and this has to do with the competition circuit, is that the Legion comes with three 17-round magazines. That's the only downside, where this one came with four 21-round magazines, so versus the three with the 17-round magazines. This has to do with the competition issue too, because I think it has to fit into a certain box for it to be legal for that particular shooting. And as you see, there's the base plates are a little different because it's made by a different company. It has the Legion logo, and it's aluminum, I believe, base plate. So that's the difference between this one and this magazine because of competition situations. Other than that, both firearms are excellent. I love shooting the X versions of the Sig Sauer line. I really like that particular line with the X versions and the triggers. And I just was not enamored with my Glock 34 anymore, so I just replaced it with something that's pretty much likes. So other than that, I would say if you already have a Legion, get the module, grip module, save yourself some money. Or if you just want to go get a Legion and you want to be in that Legion fanboy club, go with this. I registered the firearm with Sig Sauer, and I should be expecting, they have a bag now instead of that case that they have with the other Legions. They have one that's like a range bag. So other than that, it is a great shooter, and I'm just going to show you quickly some targets. These are 10 to 13 yards. Of course, I shot this and bought the firearm from Clayton's indoor shooting range, and that's over in Horsham, PA. It's pretty much my home range. I do purchase other firearms elsewhere in the area, but Clayton's has been the company, the firearms place that I've been going to for several years now. And here it is. Here's the target of my first shooting here. And here's the second target. I was trying to feel around for different spots. Again, I'm moving the target backwards and forth. And here's the last target, which is one of the ones that I'm really happy with because I blew that red out. But I was hoping I could keep all my shots in at least a circle. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Other than that, folks, I would highly recommend you to get a Legion, like I said, if you don't have the other ones. And it is a really, really decent firearm for shooting. Okay, folks. Happy shooting. Stay safe. #2A.